Good morning. Guess we can go ahead and get started about 15 seconds early. We're going to go ahead and open up with a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, once again, it is such a wonderful privilege to be able to come among the brothers and the sisters of the Lord in fellowship. We ask you, Lord, to just anoint this day in a special way, that all who come forth into this facility is blessed. Blessed, Lord, as recipients of your word, no matter what class they may attend, that you touch every teacher, that you touch every student, so that the word of God is enriched in our hearts in such a way, Lord, that we are better ambassadors and representatives of Christ wherever we may go. When the message is brought this morning through the messenger that you have chosen, Father, we pray that all who come within this sanctuary, all who hear, are vessels of fertile soil that receives your word, that chews on your word, that grows on your word, and goes forth and shines brighter because of your word. Use us, Lord, as instruments and tools to carry out your will upon this earth. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, we are back to this incredible, fantastic book of Daniel. We completed chapter 7, and now we are into chapter 8, which is perhaps 7 was 2, but 8 is a very exact historical record told in advance. One thing about the book of Daniel, the accuracy of this book is just phenomenal. It has literally blown the minds of scholars and critics alike. And as we continue in this journey, we'll discover things that are still yet to come. So now chapter 8. This is the chapter where we deal with the ram and the he-goat. And as I said, this is perhaps the most comprehensive and detailed account of prophetic events in the Bible. Now, the first section, which we've already covered, are the historical chapters. That's chapters 1 to 6. Chapter 1, we looked at Daniel and them as they were brought into Babylon. We looked at that first dream that Nebuchadnezzar had in that second chapter. Then we had that jealousy, seeing it arise in the courts as they led to that really spectacular situation with the fiery furnace. Pride. We saw Nebuchadnezzar brought down because of his pride in chapter 4. And we also find this is that chapter where he literally made a declaration of faith that went throughout all the land. Then chapter 5, the handwriting on the wall, the fall of Babylon. Then Daniel had his incursion with the lions. And in chapter 7, we dealt with the vision. Well, chapter 7 is part of the visions chapter. And the visions chapters begin with chapter 7 and then goes all the way to chapter 12. Chapter 7, we had a powerful look at what the Bible describes as the times of the Gentiles, which is the time from Nebuchadnezzar until this individual that's yet future called the Antichrist. We're going to be looking at Persia, and Greece in this chapter. That's the ram and the he-goat. When we get to chapter 9, we're going to be dealing with the 70 weeks, astounding chapter. Then we're going to take a glimpse on the dark side when we get to chapter 10. And then 11, we're going to be looking at what we call the silent years, and we're going to wrap up with the consummation of things. Now, it's important to understand that the books of Daniel are not in chronological order. First, we have 4 of the historical chapters that take place. That's 1, 2, 3, and 4. But the next event actually takes place in chapter 7. Then the next place is chapter 8, which is where we are. Both of those events take place before the fall of Babylon, which we covered in chapter 5. Then we get that situation with the plot of the Magi. But then we kind of skip until the next event, which would have been in chapter 9, which would be in the 70 weeks, and the dark side, and finally the conclusion of all things. Remember, as we said, chapters 2, 3, 4, 7, 5, and 6 are written in Aramaic. These are chapters dealing with the Gentile world. Now as we move into chapter 8, there's a shift. We're still talking about some of the same historic events, because now we're going to be talking about Persia and Greek, but we're now shifting back to the perspective of Israel, because Israel is the primary focus of the entire Bible. So now we're kind of shifting the focus. We're back dealing with Israel more so than the Gentiles. So we're going to go ahead and jump into the first verse of Daniel 8. And it says, in the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar. And as that makes it clear that this is back in Babylon, even though in the previous chapters we were in Persia, but now he's going back, talking about something that took place while he was still in Babylon. So he had this vision. He says, a vision appeared unto me, even unto me Daniel, after that which appeared unto me at the first. Notice he said he has this vision that appeared to him at the first. It's somewhat similar. The first was in Daniel 2. He was still a teenager then. And that's when he had the vision. He interpreted the vision of Nebuchadnezzar. The gold, silver, brass, iron, and iron clay, dealing with Babylon, Persia, Greece, and then Rome, part 1 and part 2. In chapter 7, Daniel is an old man, very much mature. But now he's having a dream similar to the first that he had when he was a young man. And his dream, in chapter 7, we deal with this winged lion. That's what because we already went there. Remember, we talked about the winged lion. Then we saw this bear that was on his side, okay? Then we had the leopard. Then we had that terrible beast, okay, that he really couldn't describe because it was so terrible. Now, in chapter 8, he's focusing on Persia and Greece, but he's going to use a different idiom. When he was young, when he referred to these two, he used silver and brass. Then last week, he used a bear and a leopard. He's going to use a different idiom this time, but he's still referring to these two nations. So, Daniel 8, chapter 2. He said, and I saw in a vision, and it came to pass, when I saw that I was in Shushan, in the palace, which is in the province of Elam, and I saw a vision, and I was by the river of Ulai. Now, Elam is in Persia. Now, he's having a dream okay? His physical body is in Babylon, but in the vision, he's in Persia, okay? In fact, he's specific. He's at the palace in Shushan. Now, the Shushan palace was in Susa, 230 miles east of Babylon, 150 miles north of the head of the Persian Gulf, that was midway between Ecbatana and Persepolis. Susa was the capital of the Elamites. In antiquity, it was the capital of the Elamites. Later, it was the main residence of the Persian kings. The famous palace began by Darius I and later enlarged by Xerxes. We're going to talk about Xerxes in this lesson. This is also the home of Esther. So if you go in the book of Esther, the Shushan palace, that's where she was. That's where she lived. It's also where the city of Nehemiah. And Nehemiah 1:1. And you probably have seen a lot of movies, and they talk about the Code of Hammurabi, which was found in 1901. It was founded in the city of Shushan. Okay, so this is, you'll see this place mentioned several times in the Bible, and it's important in history as well. Okay, let's go to verse 3 and 4. Then I lifted up mine eyes, and I saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram, which had 2 horns. And the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. Remember they had the bear, and the bear was kind of on its side, and one side was up higher than the other? You know, now we have this ram, where we had a bear before, both representing Persia, but they still had 2. There's 2 things, 2 sides. Remember that Persia really compiled of 2 kingdoms, the Medes and the Persians. The Medes started, they were started, okay? Now, he said, the horns were high, that was Medes, the Medes started, but one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. So Medes were like the ones who kind of like got things started, but Persia literally dominated, and it became just called Persia, but it was really Medo-Persia. So that's kind of an accurate description of what actually took place. He said, I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward. So it's very specific. Westward, northward, and southward. So that no beast might stand before him. Neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand, but he did according to his will and became great. That's Darius. They're talking about Darius. He was a phenomenal conqueror. The ram. The ram with clean feet, sharp-pointed horns, was the guardian spirit of the Persian kingdom. That was their symbol. When the Persian king went into battle, he wore a head of a ram instead of a diadem. That was his. So the ram was really an integral part of the Persian culture. In fact, the zodiac, Aries, was the ram, and it represented Persia. Now, I mentioned this guy named Xerxes. I want to talk about him for a minute. Because he was the last great ruler of Persia. And he's also the king during the days of Esther. When you go into the book of Esther, Xerxes was the king. Now, this guy visioned himself as a mighty conqueror, and he actually attacked Europe, but And when I say Europe at that time, we're talking about Greece. And he had with him an army of 300,000 men and families. Remember, the Persians traveled with huge, massive armies. I mean, hundreds of thousands. And one army was even in the millions. Okay, they traveled heavy. But the Greeks were really smart. When they came after them with 300, there's this, I think it's called the thermopylae. It's like a valley, narrow entrance. If anyone ever seen the movie The 300, you haven't seen that? Well, probably some guys might have seen it more than some of the women. But anyway, it's this massive army is coming at a smaller army, but they have to come through a narrow pass. Only a few could come through it at a time. Well, this is a similar situation. The Greeks, instead of going towards Xerxes' army, they waited for them to come through this narrow pass. So only a few could come through at a time, which ended up in them being able to defeat Xerxes. Also, Xerxes had another problem. He had 300 vessels that were destroyed by a storm at Salamis. Now, legend says, and just to give you an idea of Xerxes, when this happened, they said he went to the river, took off his belt, and began to beat the waves. Because he wanted to punish the ocean for destroying his vessels. That's the type of person Xerxes was. Okay, back to Daniel. And as I was considering, behold, an he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth and touched not the ground. And the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. So now we got this goat. Now, you probably don't imagine a goat moving fast, but the implication here, this goat moved so fast his feet didn't touch the ground. And it had this notable horn. Who do you think this might be a representation of? What conqueror was known for swiftness in his battles? Alexander the Great, exactly. That's the notable horn. You know, horns represent leadership. Okay, he was the notable horn. And he moved fast. In fact, he had a small army, I think it was like 30,000 that came against one of them massive 200, I think it was 300, I forgot, but it was in the thousands of armies, and he beat them because he moved so fast. Okay? And plus, he was a military genius, Alexander the Great. At age 20, he assumed the mantle of his father, Philip of Macedon. 6 years later, he had literally conquered the mighty Persian Empire. That was no small feat. Persia was huge, and he conquered them in 6 years. At age 30, his empire stretched from the Mediterranean all the way to India. He literally created an empire even bigger than the Persian Empire. Some say that around age 32, he was crying because he said there's no more kingdoms for him to conquer. And he died at age 32. So he had lived a very short period of time, only 32 years. And in 12 years, he literally became one of the most renowned conquerors in the world. There are so many stories about Alexander the Great that you can't, sometimes it's even hard to separate truth from fantasy. Now, he was a student of Homer. He loved the Iliad. And he kind of was on a mission to be like the new Achilles and establish a new world order. He saw himself as being, the leader of a brand new world order. He had a vision. He was a visionary conqueror. He was ruthless, though, but he was visionary. He was also a brilliant military strategist. He was also a brilliant politician. Okay, so this guy was, he was someone really to be reckoned with. This young man did a lot. Daniel continues. And he came to the ram that had 2 horns, which I had seen standing before the river, and ran into him in the fury of his power. Now understand, a ram is much bigger than a goat. Okay? So he came to the ram that had 2 horns, Medo-Persia, and it's this picture of this goat, okay, charging this giant ram with fury and power. The goat. This was a 1-horned goat, and it was a symbol for the ancient Macedonians. Once again, Persia, Aries represented the ram. But Greece, Capricorn, was represented by the goat. Capri means goat. Corn means corn, horn. Okay, so this 1-horned goat was the representation for Greece. In May of 334 BC, Alexander crossed the Hellespont with 35,000 troops. First met and defeated the Persians at the Granicus River, and this was no small task. He had 35,000, they had hundreds of thousands. Okay? In November of 334 BC, 1.5 years later, the Battle of Issus near the northeast tip of the Mediterranean Sea, he had another victory there. Then finally, at Golgotha near Nineveh, he had his final major battle in October 331 BC. This guy was a master and brilliant tactician. And I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with choler against him, and smote the ram, and brake his 2 horns. And there was no power in the ram to stand before him, but he cast him down to the ground, and stamped upon him. And there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hands. So he brilliantly conquered Persia. Therefore the goat waxed very great. And when he was strong, the great horn was broken. And it came up 4 notable horns, one toward the 4 winds of heaven. So we have the horn was broken, 4 notable horns came up. Kind of remember when we were in Daniel 7, chapter 6? And he said, behold, after this I beheld, lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl, and the beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given over it. Here you see that connection, 4 notable, 4 heads. These are those 4 kings that divided the lands of Alexander. The 4 notable horns. We've kind of went through this under a different idiom, but Cassander, okay, he conquered Macedonia and Greece. He took Macedonia and Greece. Lysimachus actually was one of Alexander's mentors, along with Aristotle. Aristotle was one of his ministers. Lysimachus was one of his mentors as well. He was much older, so was Cassander. And they took Thrace and most of Asia Minor. Now, Seleucus was closer to Alexander's age. And he was one of the major forces to be reckoned with. In fact, Seleucus conquered Syria and most of India. And then Ptolemy was actually like a classmate of his. You know, they were more like classmates. And he conquered Egypt, Syrian, and parts of Asia Minor. But Lucius and Ptolemy are the two that we focus on most because they're the two big kids on the block. Plus, Israel is connected to them. We kind of went through that several times, and we'll go through it again. Just a quick review. Cassander, he had the lands over in the west, and the Lysimachus. Seleucus was over in the east, and Ptolemy in the west. And then between them, Seleucus and Ptolemy was the buffer state of Israel. Okay? And when we get to chapter 9, we're going to go through this. We're going to look at this a little bit more. This is also that period of time called the silent years. But it's not silent, because Daniel breaks it down to us when we get to chapter 11. And out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceedingly great toward the south, and toward the east, and toward the pleasant land. Now, this little horn, don't get confused with the other little horn. This one is actually referring to the son of Antiochus, the Great. Okay? And we'll look at that a little bit more. And the pleasant land, we all know, refers to Israel. And it says it waxed great even to the host of heaven. That's interesting. Now listen. It said it waxed great even to the host of heaven. And it cast down some of the host and of the stars to the ground and stamped upon them. You're seeing a shift kind of here, okay, from a time period sort of shift. We saw this in Isaiah 14, where Isaiah was talking about the king of Tyre. But then sort of suddenly the language changes and he shifts into talking about the power behind the king of Tyre. And as you go through, it becomes clear that he was talking about Satan himself. It was sort of a change in scope. Where he was talking about the king and the prince, the king, but then it was his prince of power that was behind him. So we have these descriptions in several places where we get a glimpse of the power that is behind the throne. You see it in Ezekiel 28, similar situation. Ezekiel was speaking about the king of Babylon. But then he shifts and he starts saying things like, you were born in Eden, the garden of God. In other words, he was referencing something beyond just the mere king of Babylon. Same thing like Isaiah and here. They were talking about the real power, okay, that was behind that earthly throne. And similarly, Antiochus IV, which is the son, okay, of Antiochus the Great, is sort of setting the stage or an idiom of or representation of a ruler that is yet to come, which we all have heard a lot about. Okay? So Daniel says, and it waxed great even to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the host and of the stars to the ground and stamped them. So let's take a look at Antiochus IV. He was the 8th king of the Syrian dynasty between 175 and 164 BC. Now, this is from the book of Maccabees, remembering this is not a Bible. This is just a historical record. It's a historical book. It's like any historical book. Okay? He was the infamous brother of Cleopatra, not the Cleopatra that we all hear so much about. There were a lot of folks named Cleopatra. Now, he came to power after the murder of his brother, who was the former king, and Seleucus Philopator. Technically, he was not even the rightful heir. Okay? Demetrius, the son of Seleucus, the rightful heir to the throne, still lived, but he was held hostage in Rome. Rome is still the big power broker around here, okay, during this time. Now, Antiochus succeeded in obtaining the throne largely through flattery and bribery. He came to power on 175 BC. Then he invaded Egypt, and he defeated Ptolemy VI. But remember, Rome was the big power broker around, and they weren't happy with that. They recalled him from Egypt, okay? But when he left, he made Jerusalem a buffer state. He literally plundered and desecrated the temple. He liked to call himself Antiochus Epiphanes. Remember, these are titles. And Epiphanes means the illustrious one. The Jews had another name for it. They called it Epimanes, which means madman. So they had their own name for it. Continue on in Daniel 11 and 12. Yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host. And by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. And a host was given him against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression, and it was cast down to the truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. This guy literally tried to eliminate the customs, the practices, even the laws of Israel. Listen to it. And by him the daily sacrifice was taken away. The sanctuary was cast down. He came against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgressions, cast down the truth to the ground. From the book of Maccabees, we learn that the king sent letters by messengers to Jerusalem and the city of Jerusalem, and he directed them to follow customs strange to the land, to forbid burnt offerings and sacrifices and drink offerings in the sanctuary, to profane Sabbaths and feasts, to defile the sanctuary and the priests, to build altars and sacred precincts and shrines for idols, to sacrifice swine and unclean animals, to leave your sons uncircumcised. In other words, they were to make themselves abominable by everything unclean and profane, so they would forget the law and change all the ordinances. And he said, whoever does not obey the commandment of the king shall die. This guy was no friend of Israel by no means. Let me go back a little bit. We hear about the Maccabean revolt. Okay, this is the person that they revolted against because of the things he did. The sacrifice of swine and unclean animals. You're going to see a reference to this in the New Testament, when Jesus speaks about the desecration, okay? And this man literally brought into the Holy of Holies. It was either an idol or Zeus. I forgot who the other person was. Maybe it was Zeus but there's another person, some people. But it doesn't matter. He brought in this idol. And it just, total desecration of consecration. I mean, it was just, for a Jew, what he did was that was just the last straw. And that's when the Maccabean revolt broke out. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. Back to Daniel. Then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said unto that certain saint which spake, How long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice, and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden under foot? And he said unto me, Unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. Now, even though we have here where he says, the question was, how long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden under feet? This period of time, 2,300 days, which is 2,300 days, okay, is very controversial. Has a couple of interpretations. The problem is none of them are precise. Okay, the issue is that word days is Evra Booker, which means even morning. And it can mean one or two things. It can mean one day, evening and morning, or it can mean the evening morning sacrifice. Okay, because they had a sacrifice in the morning and the evening. And there's much conjecture as to the proper interpretation. Now, King James seems to infer that it's one day. They're not the only ones, though. There's this group of people called Seventh-day Adventists. Okay? And they grew out of what they called the Great Second Advent Awakening, in which this verse was given the day-year interpretation. In other words, one day. William Miller and his followers, among whom was Ellen G. White, understood the sanctuary to be the earth, which would be cleansed at its coming. Based on their calculations, they came up that the date of Christ's second coming was set for the year 1843. Of course, from 1843, it came 1844, and then it came 1845, and so on. And they're still coming up with new dates today. One thing to be clear is that this is referring to the second coming, not the rapture. There are no conditions for the rapture. No preceding conditions. In other words, the rapture can happen any time. Could have already happened, could happen tomorrow, could happen next year. There are no conditions that have to be met before the rapture takes place. Second coming, not same. Okay? So, if the 23 days are taken as being literally 24-hour days, the period would be between 6 and 7 years, which approximates the time Antiochus began to perpetrate his atrocities in about 170 BC. It is not exact. It's kind of, approximate. 6 years were from Antiochus' first incursion in Jerusalem in 170 BC to the restoring of the temple by Judas Maccabeus in the late 164 BC. The Jewish priests drove out the Syrian army, at which time the temple was cleansed and rededicated after its pollution. That cleansing is still celebrated today in the Feast of Lights, Hanukkah, which you'll see in John, book of John. So these 2,300 days kind of loosely can be, you can fit this narrative of what took place with Antiochus, okay, and the Maccabean revolt can kind of be fit into this scenario. There's another interpretation, and that is if you base it on the evening and morning sacrifice, okay, that would be 1,150 days because you have two sacrifices a day. So that would be 1,150 days, which is like maybe 110 days shorter to 3.5 years. Remember we talked about 3.5 years last week and how often the Bible spoke about that. So this, you could kind of say that maybe it's relating to a 3.5 year period. The problem with nothing is precise. The Bible is very precise on most things. Okay, so hey, you can go through that and your speculations will probably be just as good as anyone else's. Okay? Moving on. And it came to pass when even I, Daniel, had seen the vision and sought for the meaning, then behold, there stood before me as the appearance of a man, and I heard a man's voice between the banks of Ulai, which called and said, Gabriel, make this man to understand the vision. So the truth of the matter is, when it comes to understanding this vision, you don't really have to speculate because here it makes it clear, okay, that Gabriel is going to speak to the man so that he can understand the vision. So Gabriel himself is going to explain the vision that Daniel had. Daniel explained the vision that Nebuchadnezzar had, but Gabriel is going to explain Daniel's vision. So he came near where I stood, and when he came, I was afraid, and fell upon my face. But he said unto me, Understand, O Son of Man, for at the time of the end shall be the vision. So he's clarifying when this vision is going to be. This vision is referencing something that's taking place at the end, not necessarily at the time that he's having the vision. Now, as he was speaking with me, I was in a deep sleep, on my face toward the ground, but he touched me and set me upright. So that can either mean he literally was set upright or that he was put into a position so that he can be made to understand correctly what's being said. And he said, Behold, I will make thee know what shall be in the last end of the indignation. So we're still getting this end, the end of things. For at the time appointed, the end shall be. Still talking about the end. The ram which thou sawest having two horns are the kings of Media and Persia. And the rough goat is the king of Greece. And the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. We kind of already covered this. Okay, so he's just reiterating what we've already gone through. Now, that being broken, whereas four stood up for it, 4 kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation, but not in his power. Interesting. They're going to come in these 4 kingdoms, and they're not of his power. And in the later time, now notice here, now in the later time of their kingdom, remember he said this really was focusing on the end, the later time of their kingdom, not the beginning of the kingdom, later time of the kingdom, when the transgressors are come to the full. So now we're looking at the later times. I think that if you go back and we look at that statue, we talk about the iron with miry clay. I think we're looking around there. Transgressions are come to the full. A king, now listen to this, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up. This is a new king. This is a king of fierce countenance, understanding dark sentences shall stand up. Who do you think this is? And his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. He shall destroy wonderfully, and shall prosper, and practice, and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people. I think we're talking about this character here in Revelation 13:7. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints, and he overcome them. And power was given unto him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. We call him the Antichrist. In the New Testament, I think there are about 33 different names for him. There's even more in the Old Testament. And through his policy, also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy me. Notice how he destroys us by peace, not by war. He shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but shall be broken without hand. Remember, the power behind the power, he's sort of shifting a little bit, just like Isaiah did when he spoke about the king of Tyre, and Ezekiel when he talked about the king of Babylon. Now he's talking about, even though he's talking about this person, there's this power behind this person. We call this guy the Antichrist. And so we're seeing a type of the Antichrist being portrayed here. They said he shall cause craft to prosper by his hand. And Revelation 13:17 says, no man shall be able to buy or sell except the one who has the mark of the beast. Okay? He shall magnify himself in his heart. In Revelation 13:5, he is given a mouth speaking blasphemies with power to continue 42 months. He is an egomaniac. Okay? We called him last week, remember we called him Mr. Big Mouth? Okay? Every time I think about it, I don't know why, and in no way is there any connection, but Trump is Mr. Big Mouth too. But I kind of like a lot of what he says. But he sure likes to talk a lot. I ain't never seen nobody stand up and talk for 2 hours straight. Okay? Over and over again. Anyway. By peace shall destroy many. The rider on the white horse, first you had the rider on the white horse, then comes the red horse of war. So what we have here is a false peace. You have the white horse come in, then the red horse. It's a false peace. He shall stand up against the prince of princes. The first beast of Revelation 13 is clearly against Christ. Just kind of summarizing this character. He will achieve great power by subduing others. Okay, so he's going to subdue others. He will rise to power by promising false security. He will be intelligent and persuasive and charming. But his true power is going to come from another. And that person is Satan. He will be an adversary of Israel and subjugate Israel to his authority. He will rise up in opposition to the Prince of Princes, the Lord Jesus Christ. He will be terminated by divine judgment. Now, as I stated before, there are many allusions to this guy in the Old Testament. I know you probably can't read all that. But a couple we need to be sensitive about. And one, he's called the Assyrian. He's also called the idol shepherd, the little horn. Okay? The prince that shall come. In Genesis, the seed of the serpent. And in Daniel, the willful king, when we get to Daniel 11. There are also many allusions to him in the New Testament. Angel of the bottomless pit, Antichrist, the pseudo-Christ, the beast, the false Christ, father of lies, lawless one, man of sin, one come in his own name, prince of darkness, son of perdition, star, unclean spirit, vine of the earth. So we have many allusions to him, Old and New Testament. Because the Bible wants us to know who he is, which I find interesting because we won't be here when he comes. But he still wants us to understand, and part of the reason I think he wants us to understand, because all these false hoods that are going to come out, okay? And we need to understand that as long as we're here, he won't be revealed. Okay? And the vision of the evening and the morning which was told at is true. Wherefore shut thou up the vision, for it shall be many days. And I, Daniel, fainted and was sick. Certain days afterward I rose up and did the king's business, and I was astonished at the vision, but none understood it. Okay? So we literally did the entire chapter today. It was only one session. We will be moving to the next chapter, next session. And we're going to be dealing with one of the most amazing passages in the entire Bible. We're going to have proof that Jesus is indeed the Messiah. We're going to look at the passage that Jesus himself referenced as the key to end-time prophecy. So I'm looking forward, okay, to getting into chapter 9. So we're going to go ahead and close with a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we praise and thank you for your word. We thank you for Daniel. We thank you for letting us see the precision of this book. How you laid out history that has already taken place and history that is coming to pass. Lord, let this lesson that we are receiving strengthen our resolve to represent you wherever we go. In Jesus'